Welcome to Raising the Bar, a podcast giving no bullshit marketing advice for Aussie business owners. Expertise takes experience, and that's why we tell stories from lived experience to deliver marketing that raises the standard of what Aussie business owners should expect.
Welcome back to another episode of Raising the Bar. We are up to episode 5 now, and today we're talking about recruitment marketing.
Episode 5 probably matches the number of followers we have. Very exciting.
Oh yeah, actually pretty true. I had to call my mum and actually ask her to subscribe the other day.
She still hasn't, by the way.
And she hasn't, so
we're going well.
Feeling the love.
Now, just so that the audience is aware that if we are slightly distracted to my left, your right, the Ashes is on.
It is.
And if there's a wicket, we might just...
Yeah, or we just move to cricket talk and just
If
commentate.
you and me are recording a cricket podcast, the state of Australian cricket is in
Dire
bad way. So, yeah, that's
All
okay.
right.
What are we actually talking about?
Something, recruitment marketing.
That's it. I know a bit about that.
Yes. Okay, all right. So we'll crack into it so we can get back to the Ashes. We are finding now that recruitment marketing is a very common conversation we're having with business owners. And I think they really start when they're looking to recruit by chucking an ad on Seek or going onto LinkedIn using LinkedIn Recruiter. And yeah, there's just a lot of people saying that's not working anymore. What are your thoughts on this? Yeah,
I think there's two things in a big way driving it. I think there's no doubt we're in a labour shortage. So when we're only doing push marketing in the sense of, when we're only doing pull marketing, as in, people are looking for a job if they go on Seek or if they go on LinkedIn Recruiter, we're getting a very small talent pool. And given that the resources pool is small anyway, we're just in a situation where you're really making it more difficult. The other is that, we're constrained that people aren't staying in jobs as long as what they used to. So we kind of got this compounding impact that we are having faster turnover or tenure in organisations. I think in 2000 they used to say it was sort of 7 to 10 years. I think our average now, and I think generously, is 3.3. And I think the late working baby boomers and X's are holding that number up. Well, they're seeing much lower numbers in Gen Ys and Zs in terms of tenure. So you kind of got this compounding impact that we are having to advertise and broadcast for jobs more often. And I guess the question is LinkedIn and Seek, like LinkedIn Recruiter and Seek, is that really marketing or marketing recruitment? And I guess the answer to that is no, hence why we're having this conversation. It's just one tiny tactic that you can take.
Yeah, and I feel like with LinkedIn and Seek, when you think about how long they're actually using it across the year, sometimes it falls at that 10%, right, of the full year of like who you're actually capturing, how many people are looking for jobs at the time that they're advertising, right?
Yeah, I think, the bigger one in terms of stats that you'd want to look at is that people that are, how long's the advert on for? So, how long's the ad? You have the way that it's traditionally happened, I have a need for a role, I put an ad up for 4 weeks. I take all the candidates that apply in that 4 weeks, I shortlist them, I make a job offer, right? Or we go to a recruiter and we might do some headhunting, probably a more successful technique in many ways, but not necessarily affordable to everybody. So I think you've got to look, your what we call your total in marketing, so your total audience size or your total addressable market. It's much smaller if you're only putting an ad out there. And A players, and we're all trying to attract an A player. A players often aren't looking; they need to be enticed, right? But they're not browsing job boards and job sites because they're generally pretty happy. They have to be kind of, oh, hang on, that looks interesting, I'll have a look. So I guess what we're seeing is that move to marketing businesses now, to recruitment marketing. And in Western Australia in particular, probably the worst skills shortage there is, because you can go and earn $200,000 digging holes on the mines if you want to, is that I think it was probably even pre-COVID, just as the boom was starting. I mean, obviously COVID slowed things down and things really ramped up. You knew something was going on. I remember walking through the train station and hopping off a plane at the airport, and it was employer ads saying why we're a great place to work, not brands saying we're a great brand to buy from. That transition happened now six or 7 years ago, I feel. And so that's what we've seen, and that's recruitment marketing. It's putting your brand out there to attract people, not clients.
How much do you think people are having to spend, what's the the amount that people are now having to invest in recruitment that they weren't kind of doing before? Has there been like this steady increase? Do you think it's just kind of blown out exponentially at the moment?
I think in our bigger B2B clients, so our business to business clients, we would see what they would traditionally have spent 100% on marketing and brand, client branding. So, go to market for client acquisition and branding is now probably 50% of that spend is actually over on recruitment marketing. And that's not including their recruiting teams. So it's a big number. In fact, we've got clients engaged in managed marketing services that are just engaged in managed marketing services for recruitment. We're literally only trying to attract applications for their jobs. And these are big businesses. So that shift has been massive. And it's kind of exciting because it changes up marketing. And the irony is it's actually really, really similar. Like you've got to think about things in exactly the same way that you do in traditional, client marketing. So it's a great space to be in.
Yeah, I feel like it's quite a common conversation when you go out and you say, if you're having a conversation with a business owner, you're talking about if they need any support with their marketing, and they say, oh, I've got too much work, just not enough staff.
Yeah.
And it opens up a whole other conversation.
Well, that is marketing.
Yeah. And it's just, but there's so much lack of awareness, I think, of what can be done in that space to kind of improve recruitment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you think is kind of the first step for business owners to kind of move into to improve their marketing for recruitment?
I'm not sure it's what every business owner and founder wants to hear, but the very true fact that we have to tackle now is we have to be a really attractive brand. And so where we used to go, I need to fill a role and I could put an ad out and people needed jobs, it's like I need to actually look at what my competitors are offering and doing and find what's unique about me. So how I mentioned the A players and we've got to attract them from what they were doing.
Do you want to talk through an A player? Those that don't use that terminology.
Well, think of you and then think the opposite of that.
Oh.
Is that pretty close? What we would, a really easy way, we look at a matrix, really high values and values aligned to the business. So if you looked at your values and then within your company and you're like, yep, they address all of those things, and then really high technical or skill set, so ability to do their job. So we would say they have a role scorecard, so we roll out a role scorecard and they're consistently hitting their KPIs, but in addition to that, they're an absolute champion in their alignment with your values. So we've all worked with someone who's a technical legend, usually in engineering firms, you'll find absolute technical legend, like the best there is, bills more than anyone else, tosser. So an A player would be defined as those two things meeting together. And people they can be A players and not always be an A player and have their dips and downs, and you've got to challenge people. They can get bored sitting in that quadrant a lot, but that's essentially an A player. High values, high ability to complete the role to the satisfaction of the company.
Mm. And then also, obviously someone that can do the work and do the work well, but finding someone that works well within the team and understanding.
Well, that's that cultural alignment. If you're assessing your values and you're finding people, one of ours is give a shit. When someone doesn't give a shit here, they're kind of leaving early, they're making things sloppy, they're not necessarily getting the jobs done and leaving it on other people. They don't survive very long because we let their peer team review that. We just say, if only A players survive, that's a great thing. But away from that is an A player, and your values will be, the values of an organisation are different per organisation. A great A player in the hospital system is very different to an A player in our organisation, and it should be different because all our values are slightly varied.
Do you spend much time as a business owner thinking through exactly kind of what makes up a good staff member when you're thinking about recruitment? What even ages, kind of life experience, things like that, what works well with the team, what has in the past, you think through those things and try and narrow it down? I
don't think demographics like that, like ages and sort of background, you'd always look at experience, I guess. A really beautiful one is, so there's skill sets and technical skill sets, but here we don't really look for that. I mean, I think most business owners, if you're really honest with them, they'll say, I'm willing to teach anybody anything if they've got the right attitude, that's great. We look at a Patrick Lencioni model, so that he's the author of my favourite book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, but there's another piece of work he did that actually Brad Giles sort of introduced us to, which is hungry, humble, smart. Are they hungry enough to want it? Are they humble enough that they're not an ego walking through the office, but are they smart? And that smarts is emotional intelligence. And actually, if you have them, most other things can be trained. So we certainly look at that. in our business. But yeah, listen, I would say recruitment keeps me awake more so. Winning work's easy. In what we do, recruitment is, and finding the right team players is the thing I think. It's the thing I think about the most. Yeah.
So how do business owners attract those A players in? What are the tactics?
Yeah, so as probably not tactics, like I think it has to be a strategy about it. And just like marketing, and I was going to say it probably isn't the news that all of them want to hear, because it actually is, what do you do better? So we have to actually come back to messaging and what makes your business unique again. It's really interesting. We have a client who's a drill operator, a major drill operator, and when we put together their messaging framework and what makes them different as an employee, it was just incredibly easy. They're just a phenomenal employer. And the most important thing is they had proof of the things that they say they offer. So a career, it's SWIC, I'll say it out loud, but a career with, you build a career with SWIC. And it's a better message than that. But essentially you go in as a driller's offsider, which is a hard job, like a really hard job. But if you're going to do it with anyone, you do it with them. We will train you literally with no skills. And, I think the best example out there is I'm fairly confident their current MD started as a driller's offsider or a driller. Like, is there not a better proof story than that, right? So they're 4 pillars of what makes them different. They really could define. On another side, I've got another client whose name I probably won't say, and it's actually been really difficult. We've moved more into recruitment marketing to define, well, why is it great to work here? Because at the moment, things aren't great to work there. They're just going through a stabilisation period. Now, there is some little hidden gems, but it's been harder to pull them out. So in answer to your first question is, you have to know what makes you great to work for. And that can be really overwhelming. So, well, I don't have gyms and I don't allow work from home and I don't have these things. The thing I find really interesting about that is, I would say most of my A players here, they don't actually want to work from home. They understand being here matters. And I think if employers understand their A players and what their A players love about their company, they will attract more people by advertising, this is what we do offer you. You can constantly be curious. You can dig into things. We give you autonomy. We're not a process-driven place. It's somewhere you can find the answers. Those things are actually really attractive to some people. Pay's going to matter. I think, it's a parity selling proposition. Like, we talk about things, pay's going to matter. And then there are perks around the outside of what you can offer. But first of all, you have to define those things and just try to stay away. It's not just what you put on your job advert on Seek, but then you've got to tell the story of how you can prove that in terms of it. So start with messaging is what I'm trying to say.
And what are some other things that they should, when you're thinking about how you talk about your business and your culture and what it's like being an employee there? Obviously, I know what you're going to say, but it's important to talk to your employees, right, and see how they talk about you as a business.
Yeah, your ideal ones. Yeah, I think so. Listen, ultimately, we go back to the trust triangle, which is core in selling in any other way. But we go back to the trust triangle and it's like, here's empathy. What's frustrating you about your current role, or what would you want to change for? Is it pay? Is it flexibility? Is it actually, I work with a bunch of nufties and I do most of the work and I'm carrying the load. What do we do? Why do we have that culture in our team? What is it that drives us? So for us, you'd be like, well, actually it's a radical candor environment, and we're a high performance team, and we know those things and we've got measurements. And on the last piece is proof. So how do you do that? You actually have the clients tell the stories, and if you can get your clients on, have your employees tell the story. If you can get your employees on camera and talking about you, and you can put those tactics out to market. And we'll talk about channels in a little bit. It's highly successful, but consistent messaging matters. You can't just be saying everything anywhere. What makes you better consistently, and can you back it up?
Yeah, I was going to say the key point being that they actually deliver that once you employ the person.
I mean, that's another factor. Sorry for my swallowing in the mic. I mean, that's another factor, which is like anything you sell, you're just going to have a leaky bucket. So if you're bothering to spend on recruitment and then people leave within 3 months because what you promised isn't a reality, that's customer journey mapping, right? It's just employee journey mapping. It's got to be good.
Yeah, I guess it's that hard period though, while you're trying to plug that bucket, the kind of, I guess, burnout, or people then covering multiple roles kind of whilst you're plugging that bucket if you haven't got the talent in it. But then such an expense.
Yeah, it's a major factor. The number one burnout at the moment is, feel sorry for me once again, but
I won't.
managing directors, founders, there's just so many additional reports that they're covering so many roles. And I think definitely, we're not perfect and stuff goes to shit here sometimes, and you see if there's escalations, the people that really jump in and get it done. Luckily that's not en masse, but in those moments it can be the same people carry a lot of that load. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people worried about their key player burnout in terms of what's happening. Ultimately, when your leaders are really busy, it's really hard to teach the next level of staff. But nonetheless, that's good business strategy. That's to be solved outside of marketing. But the reality is, you just got to be consistent in what you're trying to achieve. And the people who have stuck with you will have a reason that they've stuck with you. And that's what you want to put to market and say, this is why people come and this is why people stay. You can have a lot of turnover, but ironically you can turn around and go, the ones you want to keep, have they stayed? Like, you measure the loss of the people that you wouldn't mind losing and measure the loss of people you'd really never want to lose. That's what I look at, not just the loss overall.
Yeah.
I think business owners can be fair on themselves there as well.
Yeah. And it's like, even when great candidates come along, I think because there's such a skill shortage, right, and you do all the right things, putting all the message out, even great candidates you lose just because of how many jobs are out there. People ghosting when you offer things, and the team just kind of has to understand what the journey you're doing. They're typically trying to solve the problem of employing new people, but it is just a hard market to kind of bring in the talent and be patient and not waste time training up the wrong person or spending too much on recruitment to get the wrong person.
Yeah, listen, I think once someone's been recruited, marketing can play a role to make sure that the pathway is consistent, but then everyone has a job to do on the customer journey, whether it's, we look at the onboarding of that magnificent company in Swick, and they rarely miss a step. The things they've invested in, they have built their own a mock underground mine, because one of the biggest things with drillers offsiders is, I'm a big tough guy, I could do this job, I could go and do it, and then he gets in a lift. They pay hundreds, tens of thousands for training. He gets in a lift, he goes, however thousands of metres under the ground. He sits there and he goes, I'm claustrophobic, I can't do this. So they've been smart enough to go, well, we've got to set up this mock environment, and we've actually got to make sure they can get through that, and the noise and the dust and the heat is something they can cope with before we invest in that training for them. So great companies are doing it. I think what I want to make sure that we get across, though, is for a small to medium business owner who's got, sub 20 staff, attracting right people, you don't have those bells and whistles. You can't go and build a training facility. People don't do free trials for work. So what I am saying, it's keeping, what are you doing to have your brand always out there? You can't bullshit this stuff. Someone will ghost you because something felt wrong along the journey, right? So it's just like when you lose a deal, you're like, there's a reason you lost it. And sometimes you kick yourself in, sometimes you're like, maybe they weren't an ideal client. I just think...
That's what I tell myself when I'm falling asleep.
Yeah. I think when you're looking at it's making sure that you're putting your best foot forward, and that hopefully out there somewhere a candidate is going, geez, that is a place I'd look at. If I was ever unhappy, I'd have a look at that place. Like that, they've been in my face a little bit. It's not that your ad's only showing 5 to 6 weeks a year, and it's on Seek, and that ideal candidate might not be on Seek. They might be somewhere completely different.
All right. So they've got their message. What platforms are they using? You mentioned Seek. We're saying it's not working very well. Where else?
Yeah, so I think at this point, I kind of mentioned at the start, I think I mentioned it incorrectly, but there's only 2 levers and drivers. You hear me say that a lot in the podcast. We can do push marketing, which is you don't know I exist, so I'm putting myself in front of you, and pull marketing is I'm looking for something. And obviously Seek is I'm looking for something. Seek sends you emails to your inbox sometimes, but we mostly delete them, right? So I'm talking primarily, put the Seek up. Personally for us, we just have an always on advert, just so that we're getting candidates through. And I'm just incredibly fussy with it's just for one role, we have an always on advert, and I look through and give people calls. And the reality, if they're a superstar, I'd bring them on, because that's the way we're looking. So that's existing, that's pull, right? Yep. Someone's applies for a role. But on the other hand, we're looking at push now. We're looking at actually putting our brand and what makes us different out into the market. So push tactically, get those brand stories, get the things that make you different, even if it's images of people. Know what you can offer that your competitors don't. And you will know that. If you think about it, you've probably got people that worked for someone else. You know people that knew another competitor. Perhaps their office is in a crappy location without parking for staff. Well, that's actually a great thing to be able to offer, whatever it is. So look at those differentiators, and then where the channels you'd want to send them out. We get a lot of, again, that's when we would look at the demographics of who we're looking for. A lot of inquiry from TikTok advertising, a lot of inquiry for from Instagram advertising. Interestingly, YouTube adverts. So filming those stories. So we have a very blue collar company needing to attract a blue collar resource, trade resource. And on the back of, we went for interests like mechanical, four-wheel drive, fishing, boating, that kind of thing. And we had put the advert in that demographic in a particular geographic area. And those ads will play, like if you're thinking about, so the brand's reinforcing for people of that interest group. It's a bit more broad, but it probably had 4 or 5 really good conversions last month. And when you looked at those inquiries came through, you're like, actually, that's pretty cool. I don't think we would have captured them, but they were on YouTube anyway and the ad came up. And now probably the sideball, probably not appropriate for small to medium business, which is what this podcast's for, but geofencing is a thing. So where people actually target a particular geographic area. The example that's been used for this is that there was a big, possibly top 4 accounting firm geographically targeting an area which was their major competitor, another top 4 accounting firm with a big thing. So if you think maybe of a big top 4 company who maybe had a big tax scandal in the last 2 years, PwC, their direct competitor went after like integrity matters at our company. And that's feasible as well. Those things are possible. But on the whole, I'd just say some form of always on advertising, targeting the people that you know you want to go after isn't actually that expensive. And you might find you get candidates through that were never looking in the first place and you never considered. So get it out there. Make sure that you're also backing that up with proof, the stories of your staff who can back up the claims that you're making about your business.
Yeah, I kind of love that, just the simplicity of they're not actually looking for a job, but they've got that feeling of that's a cool business, I'd like to work for them one day.
Yeah, it probably comes back to that, Brené Brown, I think she talks about like her trust bucket. You can feel the trust bucket. So she's like, everything you do as an employer, you're earning a little bit of trust to build up your bucket to win trust with someone. But it only takes one thing for that to be emptied. And I think that's one of the most difficult things in leadership. But if you spin that on its head is that, I would assume, I'll make this assumption with you, that you're not looking for a job. But if I did something that completely misaligned with your values, suddenly in an instant, that thing that's been in front of you or that ad that pops up does make you one night just click. And then I get that competitor gets that one chance to have that one conversation with you. And that's might be all you need if they offer you, a lot more and to pay off your house for you. I'm sure they'd get in. So, A players, they falter. And that's our chance to get in. But when they're faltering, they probably don't go looking, but you can get to them with push marketing. And I think that's what we're missing in a really tight labour market.
So if I'm a small business owner and wanting to start doing some recruitment marketing, is there a kind of a starting budget you would talk on? Or?
Yeah. I think that you've got to put it in a vicinity. So a nice comparison for this is if you play a recruiter, you're probably looking somewhere between the low end 18% up to like 22% of the salary. So let's just take $100,000 salary because I'm crap at maths. That's probably like an $18,000 to $22,000 fee to place someone once someone's placed. I think all up, if you're a small to medium business, and depending on the driller, the Swick example was placing hundreds and hundreds of roles, right? It's just kind of always on, but a small business often just needs one person. I'd probably have always on recruitment ads looking at about the $300 to $500 a month mark if I do have roles that, a Sparky constantly trying to find good Sparkies for his business and trying to say what's different about them. And really when you look at that, it's sort of, $6,000 a month max, and I don't think that's a bad investment. I think just to have that brand, and I've sort of heard of you before, I've seen something before, but like all things, measurement, it's really important that when you do those adverts, it doesn't just go to a page on your website that then goes to a Seek advert, because you'll never know if someone applied as a result of those push adverts as a result of the videos or the content that you're putting out there. So try to actually harvest a few of them, social media or YouTube link goes to website, an inquiry is sent from website, and you can build a form page to be whatever you want on your website. So it could be, what trade skills do you have? Could you upload a CV? And then you get that through your inbox rather than pushing them to Seek, because otherwise it looks like all the inquiries are still coming from Seek, and that's a mistake. We see a fair bit. If you just want to run broad brand awareness, and it doesn't matter if it goes through Seek as long as you're getting it, sure. But if you're spending the money and you're concerned, is that money working? Let's measure it properly as well, like all good marketing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm a business owner. Recruitment is killing me. What's one thing I could do this week? Kind of finish it off. Final question.
Make sure that you understand what makes you different. Like all things in marketing, you need to define why I'd want to come and work for you. And people just falter there because I think, honestly, as a business owner, sometimes like, oh, I'm fucking awesome. What do I have to keep? No, but to start at that and just to have to think and be unique. You're so busy trying to sell your product so often you don't think about define what makes you awesome. And the best people to tell you that are your team. Consider always on. Consider your brand now has to be out there to attract people. So when we say always on, there is always some form of push marketing working out there in the market. And also consider just having that always on CCAD so that you're not only, addressing your total addressable market for 5% of the year or 2% of the year, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, this one's less to do with marketing in the sense I think these things pass to HR and to business afterwards, but deliver on your promises. At the end of the day, if you're attracting the right type of people, and they are people you want to keep, and listen, that is a difficult thing in itself in terms of promises that people make and what they are when they arrive in your organisation. But, do those things match up? So whatever you're promising, make sure you're delivering on when you get there. So look at your staff customer journey. We always say clarity is kindness. I think that's another Brene Brown one. But is it really abundantly clear what they need to do to be successful in the role? People love to be successful. Generally, people don't want to be wankers. So how you're setting them up for success and letting them go through. Because when the market isn't, when the labour market is as tight as it is now, you don't get as many chances. And you've got to really take care of making sure your brand is taken care of in that staff customer journey.
Nice. So unsurprisingly, strategy first before execution.
Yeah, I mean, not so much looking at who you would want to hire. We do less target market stuff. I think people know that stuff. Definitely what are your competitors saying and what are they offering? Yeah. And then what makes you different. So yeah, that messaging piece is very important. It doesn't have to be crazy. But the investment probably would be in the staff videos and the stories and the proof that you can say about people's journeys. If someone's been here 4 years, I want to be telling their story of what they started as and what they are now. And that stuff I think is what resonates. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.